Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Titan Dev Stream. We are at, oh God, we're at week 6. Crikey. We've only got 4 weeks left to go. That's only slightly terrifying. We have had some just absolutely amazing stuff. Before we start looking in, I'm going to introduce our guest, which we've got on today, Jace, who is from Perforce. Jace, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I'm Jace. I'm a solutions engineer at Perforce, and basically, my background is that I was a musician first, went to conservatory for music composition, and then got into VFX and worked in that industry doing VFX for TV and film. So not game VFX, but TV film VFX. And through that, got into doing pipeline development and coding, and then got hired by Perforce a few years ago, specifically to help out with gaming customers, virtual production, VFX, animation, studios doing stuff with game engines and assets like that, as opposed to coding. Because I feel like a lot of people here maybe don't even realize this because they think, oh yeah, Perforce is the one that's used in gaming, but there's also a lot of other industries like semiconductor that uses Perforce pretty extensively. So it's kind of fun to think that you can use your Perforce server to develop your game, and then that game might also be played on a GPU that was also made using Perforce to kind of manage all of that. So kind of fun being part of that whole ecosystem. But I'm on the gaming side. I don't deal with the semiconductor stuff as much.
Yeah, you don't normally need to know, like hear about the fact that Jace has a music background because normally his entire back wall is covered in musical instruments. But you're in a different location today, so
I am,
you
yeah,
don't get to
visiting
see
family.
that lovely background that you've normally got filled with different instruments. So yeah, no, normally we do say, kind of thanks to our partners at AWS and Perforce. I guess I don't need to say thanks to our partners at Perforce today because you're here. But obviously, kind of like the partnership we had to make Titan possible. It's only really doable because of the back end that is provided by both AWS and Perforce on kind of on this stuff. So thank you for making it happen. Not only from from getting us all the licenses to be able to do it, but also for being in the background of our Discord, making sure that all of the people who join Project Titan who've never used version control before in their life and have a lot of questions on how it works. It's been good to have you there along with both Ryan's and also our bots as well to kind of help make sure that happens. Um, so in today's stream, we're going to be focusing mainly on Perforce and kind of how to use it, all of the kind of the back end stuff that we ended up putting in place so that we could run it for Project Titan. And hopefully, if we've got some time, we'll talk you through how you can go about setting up your own Perforce server as well, because they're incredibly useful. And over the years, they've become especially over the last couple of years, they've become much, much easier to set up. There's been a lot of work done by people like Jace and Ryan to kind of make sure that the information on how to set up a Perforce server, kind of is easily accessible and create kind of like links to make that stuff easier. So we'll be kind of going over how to set that stuff up, answering any questions that you've got about version control software and how it was used in Project Titan and how you can use it yourself. So if you do have any questions, make sure to post it in the inside the channel with the correct hashtag, which we'll be posting on there so that you know how to do that. But first, we are going to obviously be doing a little bit of an artsy walkthrough of Project Titan because we do that every week. So we've got to look through all of the cool stuff that's going on. So if we switch over to my screen, we have some cool stuff that I want to be highlighting. As we've been seeing the Titan world develop, it's just it's lovely to just fly around. We've had this village, I wouldn't say that it's popped up because it has been developed for a little while, but one of the things I love about it is this, this kind of like running along the river, this really nice little section here, and all of these kind of rocks coming up. These lovely little houses, which have been, kind of developed to really coming along nicely. And just kind of seeing this little space kind of come through. Grasslands in general has just had just so much stuff get added to it. It's really nice to see. So some great stuff going on there. We have, I believe that this was because this is the pangolin statue, which again is just lovely, a lovely model here that's been made. But this was originally, I think, in the volcanic region, and it might have moved. But it's got this really nice kind of area that's been created here. All these lovely little pools and things like that going in. Really nice statue work going on there. These really cool little wicker houses really caught my eye. And of course, this is part of the kind of the carnival area that's taking lots and lots of different, kind of points from different regions and bringing them together, which is really nice. Also wanted to cover some of the smaller props as well, because we have had just a ton of these really nice kind of decorative small prop assets. This ham is really cool, really full of character. Definitely could do with a little bit more polys. Still a lot of people really used to that kind of high poly, low poly process, not used to getting as much geometry in there as possible. Some terrified looking dead fish, and some really nice fruit as well. So in general, so just really nice stuff going on here. This little pool took my eye as well, which is inside the tropics area. Some lovely, kind of use of the coral meshes that have been used from the Arctic area. And in general, I think the Tropic team have done some of the best foliage variation that I've seen on the project so far. So really nice kind of characterful, kind of foliage elements. They've done loads of different pieces. So these ones, kind of especially really cool. And some more small props as well. Again, the night market, which is just, kind of a really cool piece as well. Though I think still maybe using single wood plank instances, which needs to be resolved. But otherwise, one of the things I love about this is this little route that you can take up. So you follow it along here, and it takes you up to this little upper deck level that you don't even necessarily notice when you're on this ground one, because you can only really just notice it. So some really nice kind of like layering there of different heights and things to get it all together. And then we've got another temple that's coming as well. Some really nice modeling going on here. Really characterful buildings. So all of this root work that's coming in to kind of form these pillars is really nice. A really lovely blend of organic and inorganic meshes to create some really nice geometry. So some excellent work there. We're building up another swag list. We will be updating it soon. There's a lot of people on there already. So again, make sure that your Perforce username your Discord username matches your Perforce username, because that is how we find you on here. We find you on the assets, and then we list you through there. So make sure that you have done that if you want to make sure that you're in the running for swag. We do still have, I think it's 20 people who are down for swag on Perforce, who I haven't been able to find on Discord. So make sure that you keep that stuff updated, and then you'll be happy. Also, make sure when you are updating that you're keeping your ArtStation page up to date as well. Each of you will have an ArtStation submission page. Make sure that you're posting your submission page up on there. Again, it's really easy to forget that actually the Titan challenge is very closed off. The only time people ever actually get to see it publicly are during these live streams. There's no NDA in place that for you to worry about. You are completely free to share your work, so make sure you're posting your stuff up on the ArtStation challenge and also on your own portfolio as well. And yeah, make sure that you are having fun. as well. There's some people getting a bit stressed, and I want you to just remember this is a fun challenge. If you need to step away, just step away, and that's absolutely fine. But anyway, today we are going to be talking about Perforce. And I think should we start off with some of the stats because
Sure, yeah.
I kind of love the stats. Or we could start with the visualizer. I'll leave it up to you, Jace. What do
Mm,
you want to do?
yeah, maybe we start looking at the visualizer and then we can look at some stats that help
Mm,
explain kind of some of the stuff that happened in there.
okay.
So if you can put my screen up here. So those of you in the Discord, I've been posting these visualizations that I've made occasionally in the general channel, where I've kind of been updating this as the project has evolved. But for today, we can actually view this in an interactive mode. So you can see this is the start, and I can actually hover over here and see, oh, this is Sam, who is making this very first thing here for the templates. And if we just kind of play this for a little bit, we'll watch very quickly. This is the launch day. Suddenly we have other people. This one, I believe, is Aaron. Yep. Pause that for a sec. And so we can see this all starting to build out. And yeah, okay. Here comes everybody. So this is when we actually launched and all the people started joining. And you can see up at the top here is the date. And so we're kind of watching as the time goes by, seeing everyone going in here. If you two,
Every time you post these, I just I sit and watch the full screen it and just I love watching it. It's so cool to see it, especially
yeah, I
when
just,
something massive gets deleted.
yes, I was just gonna say, I'm gonna pause this for just a second here, and we'll notice this one here is Aaron over here on the right, and just watch Aaron go. Boom! He just destroys that little branch over there. But yeah, I just want to say real quick, this visualization software is called Gorse. I just want to give a shout out to them. It's a little open source project that can run on Git repositories, and I made an adapter so it can run on Helix core repositories, where it's basically just able to play through the history and then kind of makes this visualization animation of it. And actually, let me bring this up. So you can see up in the top left, there's a little key. So all the green ones are UAsset files, which is obviously most of it. But then also the purple ones are, or I guess sort of pinkish, purplish. Those are the UMAP files. You can kind of see like where those fit in with the folder hierarchy, which is kind of fun. And then a few PNGs and FBXs here, but mostly all those UAsset files. And then you can also see that we have kind of this one over here on the left. This is the main like root of the project. And so we can see that off of here, we've got characters, which is starting to grow now around April 7th here. That's starting to
That's a
expand.
good reminder for you character artists. Get your stuff in the project. We
Yeah.
still, even if it's just a mesh as a representation, because again, the more stuff that gets into the project, the more likely it is to get eyes on it. So um,
Yeah.
anyway, sorry,
Uh, yeah,
Karen.
yeah, and then you can see also like VFX off of here. People have been making some cool things over there. But then we have this branch for environment, and then off of this we have all the different biomes. And this is where I think is really cool. And actually, I'll zoom in a little bit here and kind of move over to this side, so we can see. We've got like marshland coming off down here to the bottom right that then has, all of these branches coming off of it. Then we have grassland over here, a little bit smaller. Starter Island started off really soon, and then it kind of stays about this same size most of the time. So it's just really interesting getting to see this. And in the visualization, you can even zoom in on individual users and kind of follow them around and see what they're doing. So it's just, I love data. Like you said, Aaron, when I first discovered Gorse, this software for doing this, I did the same thing. I watched a bunch of videos on YouTube of people's visualizations of different repositories and stuff like that. And I'm just like, this is amazing. So I was like, ooh, I get a project that's nice and big to show this off.
That's
So we're
really
now at
fast.
April 16th. So we're One thing I've noticed that's interesting, and we'll see this on some of the graphs too, is that the rate of new files and edits and things happening has actually stayed fairly consistent through the project, even as a lot more people have been added. And so I don't know if that's people kind of slowing down on that or if they're discussing more or what. So that's just kind of an interesting thing. You'll see that the whole thing's not growing as fast now. It's more just like little maintenance and tweaks and stuff.
Yeah, which I would expect anyway, right? Like the bulk of the project, you're going to be bringing in like placeholder assets and blockouts and things like that, and those are
Yeah.
very, very quick to make. So you'll be kind of like rattling through, adding base assets and things like that, and throwing stuff together. And the like those first couple of weeks are going to be really chaotic and were quite chaotic, right? Because people were just adding and removing stuff and doing it. But as the thing solidifies, it's going to become more about refinement and um, people cleaning up and things like that. So it definitely makes sense. I think we had the original visualizers as well. They included the external actors folder as well,
Yes.
right? And those
Mm.
were, I mean, those just dwarf anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, kind of like last weekend when after the weekend and I pulled the latest submission, it was 11,000 files added, 9,000 files deleted, 6,000 files like modified. It's like something like that, right? And it was
Yeah.
absolutely huge. You're just like, well, someone's been busy over the weekend. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's good.
I would say that it's also very representative of a healthy project, right? Like you said, on the first weeks, you're going to see a lot of blockout, a lot of movement as people start designing the environments and start moving things around, testing what works, what doesn't, right? Um, then it slows down as people start iterating on specific environments and specific parts of the project. So it makes sense that it settles down. One thing that I would probably not want to see at this stage in the project or even further is for one of the branches to suddenly go red and disappear, because that usually means that something bad happened,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it actually happens. I mean, during development, features need to be cut, environments need to be scaled down, right? It's just the reality of how it works, right? But so far, I would say this is very representative of what a healthy project would look like.
Yeah, from this view, the project's definitely healthy, but it's definitely unorganized. From that view, I think we've got three folders called Arctic, all with different spelling.
I have noticed some of those. Yeah, there's some duplication.
Yeah, which is fine. It'll all get
Yeah.
cleaned up eventually.
I think that's why a lot of times, and actually I was curious to ask the two of you about this, but I feel like because it was sort of organic, the way that this grew and the way that the folder structure was created, I think that really lends to that chaoticness versus working on a project where you come in and you're given like, this is the naming convention, this is the structure you have to follow. Like, how different has this felt from more, I guess, professional game development, or is it always a little bit chaotic like this?
I mean, it's always a little bit chaotic.
Mhm.
But I think the biggest difference is that you have much clearer communication channels in the games industry.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, right, because it's all completely optional, you don't necessarily are not necessarily able to communicate with the person who submitted the content, because
Mm,
Yeah.
if they haven't linked their Discord name correctly, or they haven't done it at all, or they haven't joined Discord, but they have joined the Perforce and started adding content, you don't necessarily have the ability to communicate with that person.
Yeah.
Um,
There's usually more of a hierarchy, so it's easier to enforce when you actually have not just three people at the top of everything plus mods, right? But you also have leads, you have senior artists at different levels in the production that can enforce some of the structure, right? So in the end, it's just a reality of the scope of what we're doing and the amount of people that are contributing to this, right?
yeah,
yeah.
we've definitely tried to flip flip the hierarchy as much as possible because we want people to have some autonomy with, with what they're doing. The kind of like the key thing for me is just as long as it aesthetically fits within the world and it's like cohesive, that's all I really and it's built correctly. That's all I really care about. So I'm not going in and trying to force people to build a specific thing. I'm just trying to make sure that the world that's being created is all going to fit together. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a very weird thing, whereas other like normally it would be very much more directed. I don't know if people would want that or not on this kind of
It'd
thing.
be
Like,
interesting to see for next time. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, maybe. I think some people have been really frustrated with the lack of leadership on this stuff. But I also
Right.
think that if there was someone going in telling everyone what to do, at that point, how is it any different from a job? At that point, like
Right.
it's like I want you to go in, I want you to have fun and build stuff and get a community and build some bonds with the other people doing it and make something fun. And as long as it kind of fits those three things, I can kind of stay clear of it and you can have your own, kind of ownership of the world. But yeah, who knows?
Mm.
It could have gone very differently either way easily.
Yeah. So this is today. This is the final state of things right now. Again, not including the external actors, like you mentioned, because that dwarfs all of this. So let's talk about some stats.
Ooh, okay. Excellent.
Yeah. So it's funny, we were just talking before the stream about how when I'm trying to explain to other people what my job is, I always say, like, the games industry and VFX, for movies and TV, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I kind of do the boring stuff that helps them do their job and helps them make their stuff. But to be honest, to me, it's not boring. I love this stuff. Like developing pipelines, automations, custom tools, figuring out workflows like that's exciting to me. And so getting to look at data like this is really cool. So this one here is the number of add operations per day and delete operations per day on this. So the red line here is deletes and the ads. And it's nice to see that the ads are more than the deletes. So Aaron has not come along and deleted everybody's work. So that's good to see. But this is what I meant about we kind of hit this peak of adding a lot of stuff on April 12th. And then it's kind of, it's stayed somewhat consistent with these sort of ups and downs through this. I wonder if these might be weekends, these little peaks that happen here.
I like that the adds and removes are kind of staggered. So you have some of the biggest add peaks, and then immediately you have a
Right.
higher delete peak.
Yeah, like this one here. Yeah, that's great. So I also was curious, of all the files in here, which ones have been modified the most? And so for that, I put this together. So this is the top 10 most modified files. And so this level instance for Arctic City.umap is the winner by a pretty large margin here, 36 times compared to 26, which is the Titan player pawn. Do you know what the Arctic City level instance is?
I can find it. Hold on, let me get it.
Yeah, we could go to that if you find it. But
I'm
we've also
fairly sure
got
it's the LI Arctic City. Oh, it's not. Okay, it's a different one. But yeah, no, that does make total sense that it's changed the most. Like this one, I think we called this out on one of the other live streams of having some really great iteration on it where they'd gone through and they changed this hand that they'd done, kind of a hand that's
right.
the whole
Yes, the
city.
hand.
A load. So I think, is it this one? LI_Arctic City.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. So some really cool stuff there. So yeah, iteration is key. Cool.
Very cool. And then some other ones. There's the Titan player pawn, and then also the water painterly asset that I feel like is being used all over the place. That's had 25 different iterations. But then we've also got some things like the marshlands, the frog leg house, I think I remember that one from another stream. I think you showed that maybe last week.
Yep. Yeah. We got that as
Uh,
well. Let's bring it up. Lots of iterations on that one.
Yep, that's the one.
Mm.
And then there's the Twin Fortress B, which is another level instance.
Let's see if I can find it. Is twin underscore?
Yeah, twin underscore fortress underscore B.
Let's
Yeah.
go take a look. Oh, it's pivot's gone crazy, but it's
Whoa.
there. Or it's bound, sorry.
Oh yeah, I see.
Yeah, okay. The floating.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's cool.
Not Twin Fortress A.
Yeah, interestingly, Twin Fortress A is not on the leaderboard for most
Really? Yeah,
modifications.
not as much love. Okay, good to know.
Yep. Let's see. What else do we have here? We have some more assets for Water Painterly. We have the waterfall material, had a lot of iterations.
Oh, okay.
That really nice flowing waterfall material. Let's see. The Stonebridge underscore 500 static mesh is another one on the leaderboard here.
Okay.
And then also the Stonebridge underscore collapsed. Both of those were on the leaderboard here. So then Aaron and I were talking yesterday about what if we got some leaderboards for the users themselves and kind of see who's been doing what. So I want to start off here actually with just the most number of change lists submitted. So not files, but individual change lists. And Jen Chang 2024 rushed it. 196 change lists, and the next closest is 116.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Wild. Yeah.
I think we do need to assign some swag to these. So are we gonna say the top 3, or should we just do all top 10? Get swag. Because we could do all top 10s. How many top? I think we could probably do all of them.
Yeah, you could see because there's definitely some overlap between some of these lists we're going to go through here of the top 10. So
yeah.
So this is number of unique change lists where we have a very clear winner. You'll see, Aaron, that you're on the leaderboard here in number 4 for most change lists submitted. Let's see, who else we got? Chris Brown Dev, Ren Farnell, TRJJ, Navarro Cole. Oh yeah, I've seen you in the Discord. Greg Laux. No idea if I'm saying any of these names right. Anna Komitska, Klukle, of course. Everyone's most helpful person in the Discord. And then Mick Cabra. No idea on that one. So then if we take this and instead of looking at individual change lists, if we look at just actual number of files added to the project, and we pull this up, we actually have Sebastian comes up to the leader here.
Thanks. I am claiming my swag, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And Aaron, also 4th place here. So you're 4th place on both of those lists. You'll see we have a lot of familiar faces like Chris Brown Dev here. Yeah. But this one actually has got some different people when we're just looking at number of files here. So that one's pretty cool. And I'll give all these lists to Aaron so you can start giving swag to people.
Yeah, I think we'll do swag for all 10. We're not going to do this again though. So
yeah, don't go add a ton of files.
Don't go like adding as many files as you possibly can to get swag, because this is it. We're not doing it anymore. But all of these people, if you're in the top 10 of any of these, you're getting swag.
I should also clarify that these stats were only pulled from files inside of the content folder. So this doesn't include external actors, or sorry, and excluding external actors. So, I mean, pretty much everyone's just putting stuff there, but not including external actors. So if you just put in a zillion copies of something, that's not counting toward this particular list. Okay, so now we have most edits, where Aaron starts to crush it here. You've gone in and changed a lot of files.
I have helped optimize a lot of files.
Yes. Sebastian's on this one as well, down here in what's this, 8th place.
Yeah, and probably half of that is just gonna be walk gameplay code.
Yeah, it might be.
It's going through a lot of iterations, but it's getting better.
So this next one is for most deletes. And when we talked about this, Aaron, you think you've got a shot at winning this one, right?
I thought I might do, yeah.
Yeah. Would you have, if you had to guess how many files you've deleted? For perspective, you've edited 1,144 times.
I think I could be in the like, oh, I don't know. I think I could be in the thousands. No, maybe not. I don't know. 2000?
Okay, all right. Let's see. Let's
I
see how you
don't know.
did. So only 1,200, but
Oh,
compared to anybody else, the next closest is 173. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, there's,
you are.
people have uploaded some content that needed to be removed. Uh,
I think you're going to make the Lord channel. They're gonna have to make an identity for you, the Destroyer.
Ooh,
I
that's
didn't know.
good. I
Okay, so I
like
think,
that.
yeah, most of those, and actually,
Yep.
you can even see it in the Perforce visualization. When it does
Yeah.
that mass delete. I think that was because someone originally uploaded like just a massive backlog library of assets that they
Ah,
tend to work with. That obviously isn't appropriate for for the jam. So I went back and I deleted all of that content. So a lot of that could be those.
okay.
But yeah, I've been fairly active in removing content.
Right.
As we progress through the jam.
Yes. Well, as predicted, you won.
I'd be interested
Uh,
to see this with external actors as well, actually, because I think that would
yeah,
change.
actually, you're right. That
I think
would
that
be
would change
interesting.
that number quite a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then this last one here, I was curious about. So this is only counting within the environment folder, the different biomes to kind of see. Now this is total operations. So this is any add, edit, or delete, just kind of showing activity, basically. And I thought this one was pretty interesting that our winner is Marshland, but we can see this very clear divide between these few really active ones and then some like Starter Island and Sulfur that really haven't had a ton of file activity. I mean, still 1,612, right? It's not nothing. There's still stuff going on, but it's just interesting to see this big difference. How has that tracked with your experience of watching the progress?
I definitely think that tracks. Like, because like if you look at marshland and grassland, they're definitely the most developed. Arctic is developed a lot as well, but it's in quite densely packed pockets. So there's like the Iktu village, which is coming along really nicely. Kind of the hand island that's kind of got a lot in it. And there's quite a lot of secret stuff in the Arctic
Mm,
area where they've burrowed away into different places. So it
nice.
doesn't look as developed as the other regions, but actually there's quite a lot there. You just have to really look for it. Um, so the fact that those three are the biggest, it does not surprise me at all. Clifftop, Desert, Starter Island, Sulfur, they're definitely on the less densely populated side. Um, and then volcanic is like that's actually starting to pick up quite a lot. So yeah, all of that makes total sense to me.
Right. I guess tropics here because of all the foliage you were talking about probably has helped contribute to that
Yeah,
number there.
they're working really hard on that whole region, and it's definitely coming together. I think it's just taking them a little while. I think they had some trouble with PCG, um,
Mm,
which many regions did.
yeah, yeah. I guess Starter Island's also kind of a smaller area compared to the other biomes.
Yeah, definitely. It's only a paltry kilometer by a kilometer. So yeah, definitely smaller, but also just I think still less activity as well. I would have thought that people would have pounced on Starter Island because it is like the first place that the player goes to. So like
Yeah.
there's I thought more people would be more interested in that, but actually the grassland and the marshland region just absolutely skyrocketed.
Felt like right in the first week, Starter Island really quickly had some nice block out on it. But yeah, then it's kind of stayed with just that little, like the little like wizard's castle up on the hill, and then that kind of what like Roman looking courtyard thing down at the bottom. And it's kind of stayed as those and hasn't changed a ton since then.
It's had some really nice rock detailing done to it. So if we switch my screen quickly, I can show you some of it. So it's definitely progressed more. There's like all of this rock work that's come through the
Mm.
entire island. And yeah, like this wizard tower came up basically, I think it was almost day one.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
that's what I meant. It happened so fast.
this thing came up really close afterwards, but they've started putting in some villages and stuff like that. Um, I think there's some potential for this stuff. I think this needs to collaborate with Clifftop, I think, because their city is coming through here. And then they also have like they've got these little assets which are really nice. That they've made as well.
So that technically counts as Starter Island, these little guys.
This is all Starter Island.
Oh, cool.
It
Okay.
is the island. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, it's the whole thing. And then yeah, this bridge came up reasonably quickly, and the block out was really strong. And then they've just kept developing and developing it. So they do some good iteration on this stuff as well. And then there's this as well, which is kind of starting to come together.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there.
Well, cool. That's all the stats that I have to share for this.
So I think I've got a couple to share as well.
Just while you're looking for that, I just think this is one of the things that's so cool about version control just in general. But like for game development, when I'm watching, you know, live streams where people are talking to developers of different games and they'll ask a question, the fact that a game they made 10 years ago, they can go, yeah, I think it was John that made that change. But let me go check the Perforce server and see. And you can actually go back and like find all of those things. I love that, like having all that data and all that history to go back to remember where you've been and to what you've done.
So yeah, I've got a few numbers which are good. So we do some of those. So we have our change list count week by week, which is quite interesting. So again, like that first week, just under 2,000, nearly 4,000 week two, and then 5,000, 7,000, 8,000. So like you said, the rate change like kind of stabilized from the last couple of weeks. So I think it's going to be really interesting seeing week 6 to see if that kind of more stabilized change list has kind of stuck through.
And
Files added.
that tracks too, because I feel like the biggest ads spike that we saw was April 12th. And so that probably lines up with right around that week 3 probably is when we kind of hit that kind of when the spike started to round off in terms of number of submits too.
It's also when we already had the most stable user count by that point, right? Because weeks 4 and 5 were relatively small in the number of extra users that got added to the project, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. We only went up by, was it 100 or 200? I think each week from that point. The first, I think it was like the first 2 weeks were absolutely insane because like we obviously we gained. I think the original number was like 3,200 people that were unique. It's the numbers between what we actually get and the ArtStation challenge count are slightly different because they don't count duplicates as one and the same. So we were 3,200 when we first launched, but by the end of our live stream, our opening week live stream, we went up by another 800 people.
Right.
So like so the next week we added an insane number of, again, like it was like another 1,000 something people afterwards, and then it did slowly dip off. But even the week after that, I think it's like 600 unique users we added again. So yeah, the numbers definitely stabilized, and obviously we've locked now, so you can't join the challenge anymore through ArtStation or any other means. So it's we're very stable now. But yeah, so 20,000 files added in the first week. I am including external actors in that because it makes the numbers bigger. So it sounds much more impressive, and it is. So then we've got week 2, 43,000, week 3, 58,000, week 4, 76,000, and then week 5, which I need to go in and edit and format correctly, 103,200. So kind of that's kind of one of the interesting thing about external actors, as well with that is that I think what we'll start seeing with this are more external actor file changes as the project progresses, because more people are working just directly inside the levels and moving them around. Though that might get counterbalanced by the fact that people are consolidating content more. So a lot of people are working with level instances, which is the way that we've advised people to work, because it keeps things nice and containered, and it makes things much easier for us to work with as well. But a lot of people are working with level instances that are marked as external actors, usually because it means that when you drop it into the world, it drops it in as basically they get dropped in as individual elements, not from like a kind of in an editor view, but the map treats them as such. So it makes it much easier from that point of view, for the world to stream them in and out. But as we kind of start getting kind of the content more and more consolidated, we're going to be getting people to start packing that content together, either as like pack level blueprints or as PCG, so that we can start just kind of like cleaning up that world a little bit more. So yeah, we ended up with our final challenge account, 4,129 unique challenges, which translated to 2,119 Discord members, and 1,490 workspaces. So that's our kind of, our fall off on that, which is, I still think is pretty good, considering considering the requirements for the project and things like that. So we've got 1,500 people who've actually made a workspace and done a sync.
Yeah.
That's
very cool. It's funny when we had our first kind of early meetings about this, and you're like, yeah, I think we'll have maybe 2,000 people. And then before it even started, you're like, actually, we're going to need more licenses than that. So we're like, okay, here you go. And then 1 week in, you're like, actually, could we get another 1,500 licenses?
Yeah, we started out with 2, and then I came back. We're going to need another 1,000. And then it was we're going to need another 1,000, and then another 1,000. We're up to 5,000 now, and I think we're okay. We won't be coming back for another license change, but
right.
It was pretty crazy, because we based those numbers off off the previous ArtStation challenges, and we've got half the challenges that a regular ArtStation challenge has, because normally it includes a concept phase and and kind of like a non-games like kind of thread, so you can do it for kind of like film as well. So we were looking at it and we were like, well, okay, if we take all of the previous challenges and then we just count the numbers on all of the threads that we'll have, so environment and character and VFX and material, if we do that, then we'll end up with the probable number that we have, and that number was just under 2,000. And then obviously we ran the challenge, and a lot more people signed up to it than we'd anticipated. So we had to adjust.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the licenses. We actually had to scale up the servers and all of the backend resources to account for all of the users.
Yeah, which luckily we could do.
Yeah. AWS was amazing with that.
Yeah, it's like the fact that you could just go in and be like, okay, we're going to change the complexity of the computer that we're on, and we didn't have to actually do anything. We just pick a different machine and pay a little bit more, and it just it just transfers it all over, and you're running on a better machine. Same with the memory changes, right? Like you could just go in and be like, I need more memory, and all you need to do is say this much more, and then you update the Perforce account. Anyway, we've gone through some stats. I think we've probably got some questions. So let's have a quick look through. Right, so we've got a few. I've got to ask them first. I've got to ask this one first. Is it pronounced Perforce or Perforce?
That is a great question. We actually internally just had a big discussion about this. So officially, the correct pronunciation is Perforce, and it's the same as the official pronunciation of the word Perforce. Like if you look it up in the dictionary, that's where the emphasis goes, is on the force part. However, I feel like most people say Perforce, including people at Perforce. So I will sometimes switch between them. I try to say the right one more often, but it feels unnatural sometimes because I'm so used to people saying Perforce. So there's your answer. It's kind of either.
Yeah, because I always say, oh God, I'm not even going to be able to say it now. I always say Perforce, right?
Yeah.
But I know it's supposed to be Perforce. So
Yep,
like I
exactly.
try to say it, and it's really hard. But yeah, it's you need a good ad campaign, I think, that explains it.
Just
That'd be
gotta
good.
hire Emma Watson and put her in Hermione Regalia to pronounce it
Uh,
correctly, right?
right. She could give everybody a lesson on you're pronouncing it wrong.
Pronunciation.
It's Perforce. Yeah, love that. Actually, on a similar note to that, something that comes up a lot is the distinction between Helix Core and Perforce. And just to clarify that one, so when Perforce was started back in the 80s, I think, was originally, it was just version control. That was it. Modern day, Perforce now includes a lot of other pieces of software, a lot of different things for parts of DevOps and like testing and static code analysis and all sorts of stuff. And so the thing that was what Perforce was by itself is now called Helix Core. And Perforce is the whole company that has all these different things. So if you ever come across that and you're like, wait, is it Helix Core? What's that? That's if you've always thought of Perforce as version control, then Helix Core is that same thing.
Good to know. So next question: how many workspaces have made commits? So I didn't have that stat available, but I've just gone through and done a quick check, and the number is 1,315. There you go. So of those people who did it, which is what 1,400 and something, most of them have at least made a commit, which are cool.
It's a much higher percentage than I expected, actually.
Yeah, same. It's crazy. And then how many more weeks are left on the project? We've got 4 weeks, I think. So thereabouts. We finished June 7th, so that'll be it. How has the Perforce performance handled all of the users? Any bottlenecks? So that one I think is a great opportunity for us to bring up maybe the Grafana.
Sure thing. Sure, I can share my screen. I got it set up over here.
So in the first week, I think it was, maybe the first 2 weeks. Actually, the first week we were fine, and it kind of all ran along, and we were on quite a low level AWS like compute machine to do it for that one. And then we'd left everything as basically as default, I think, for it. And then as the project went on, we started to get kind of like more and more demand as more people got more confident submitting and adding content. And we started to run into a few issues, which are, kind of nothing to do with Perforce. It's mainly just because we'd set it up with a bunch of default settings and then left it, expecting it all to be fine. So I think for kind of like week 2 and 3, we ended up doing a little bit of maintenance just to make sure that it was running smoothly. I think one of them was just due to the fact that we were getting like a log file that was increasing past like the file size that it could deal with.
Yeah, you can actually see it here. So we, unfortunately, we don't have stats going back all the way to the beginning of the project because we installed the monitoring and everything after. But you can see how it progresses over here. So the yellow line, let me maximize this view. So yellow line over here is going to be metadata, which is mostly changes. And you can see what happens with the logs, everything. So that's when we started making some corrections and everything. So what Aaron was mentioned on week 2, we basically got to a point where we ate through most of the space requirements for especially for logs, and we actually had to go in and rescale the entire server and everything else over here. So right now we're running on eight cores and 32 gigs of memory. And you can see some of the stats. This is for the entire time that the project has been, the entire time that Grafana has been picking up data. So probably 1 week less than the entire project. And you can see that that is handling well. I mean, most of the spikes don't even reach 50%. We could actually scale this down on servers if we needed to adjust the budget for something like this. But right now, this allows us to handle any spikes, any unusual activity, especially towards the end, right? So that is probably going to be good. Jace, is there any other stat that you want me to highlight over here since we're in Grafana already?
Yeah, I think something that would be interesting is when you were showing the storage on disk, one thing to point out on that graph is that this is showing it in percentages of the disk, but it might be interesting to people to know what are the actual sizes of these disks, or how much is that taking up. I don't think we can view that directly here in Grafana, but I'm just curious if you knew.
Yeah, we can't directly, but I have the separate stats over here. I can't put them on screen, unfortunately. But basically, what we have here, so the main depot's drive, which is going to be all of the actual content that we're committing, that is set to 1,000 gigabytes, and we're down to like right now 23% of usage. So we have plenty of space to go.
230
that's why
gigs, would that be accurate?
230
You said that the
gigs,
drive is 1,000 and we're at 23%.
Yep. So we're up to 230 gigs. That's not going to be the full size of the project because you have all of the revision history to go back, right? So all of the assets, counting all of the changes that we've done since we began, 230 gigs, right? So on that end, we are really not bottlenecked by storage on this. So if you want to go ahead and increase the triangle size on models, what Aaron has been giving advice over the past few weeks, right? If it's curved, give it enough resolution so that it's actually curved. We can support that, and it shouldn't be a problem.
And we can always add another terabyte if we need to.
Yep.
Right. You've got so much headroom at this point. I think you'll be fine.
Not eternally, but for the rest of the project, we should be fine. Yeah. So for logs and metadata, which are the yellow and the cyan, the light blue line over here, we're at 50 gigs right now. And this was when we got into the first bottleneck when we actually had to scale. And this is, if you want to set up your Helix Core server, this is something that you probably want to consider. Make sure that you have more than 5 GB of free space on your drives, right? So originally we had something like 10 gigs, and we ate through the first 5 gigs, and then that's when we started getting issues, getting notifications, and we had to scale it all the way up, right? So the way this is going, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jace, but we could have these lines right now go up all the way up to something like 90%, and we would still be fine because we would still have the
Right.
5 gigs cushion that we need to keep operating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that 5 gig cushion is just there to avoid a real problem, which would be if you tried to write more data than the disk could store, and then you could end up with corrupted files and things like that. So that buffer is kind of there as a safety. So you hit that before you actually use up your whole disk.
And 5 gigs is a pretty generous.
Yeah, you can actually
cushion that you
configure
have.
it to be less than that. In your server configuration, you could set it to be a smaller number, but yeah, the default is that 5 gigs.
All right, so we got this. We got plenty of other stats over here. Disk utilization per device and network usage, network traffic, that might also be interesting. So this is basically what we're looking at for the amount of network bandwidth that we're using. Not entirely sure if this is just outgoing or if it's also incoming. That is
I'm
actually
not
a
sure
good
how
question.
this dashboard's set up.
Yeah, but basically what we're using on throughput. If you're setting up cloud operations, this is actually an important number and something that you have to monitor, because part of your costs are going to scale based on this, right?
Yeah, so that's an interesting piece when it comes to the networking part, is that, you know, the advantage of the cloud is that even kind of the lowest end instances have usually a 10 gigabit network connection. And so it's very unlikely at any kind of reasonable scale that you're going to hit a point where you've saturated that network too much and you're actually hitting a bottleneck in terms of bandwidth from the server. Like, more likely it's going to be all your users at home who will have less bandwidth than that could use. Versus if you were to host your own Helix core server at home or something like that, which then you don't have to pay the cloud hosting costs, but you might end up being bottlenecked by your own upload speed specifically. Because if people are downloading from like your home, your upload speed might end up being a bottleneck if you had a lot of users. But if it's just a few, you'd probably be fine there. But yeah, like Sebastian said, the cloud providers, all of them charge you for the amount of data that comes out, but all the data that goes in is free. So anytime you're syncing down the whole project, you're getting charged, you know, some amount per gigabyte. That's relatively low, but it can add up if you've got a lot of users, or if you're like completely resyncing the project, like doing a forced sync and re-downloading everything every single day. That can definitely add up. I usually see that with if someone has like an automated build machine set up, that it will, you know, download all of the files to do a build every day. That if that's set up so that it kind of deletes everything in between each run and then re-downloads it all, that can kind of make that number add up, and then you can get some significant charges from the cloud providers.
Yep. So speaking about network traffic, I don't know if this is a good point to start talking about proxy servers and scalability on a larger point, right? So I don't know if you... So I can probably start with this, right? So one of the main challenges that we have here is not just being able to have a cloud server that is going to host all of this information, right? But also how far away are your users, right? So our main server is, for instance, in this case, in London, right? If you have a user that's in South Korea or India, you're going to have a larger ping, you're going to have longer connection time, and that is also going to affect the overall performance of your system. Okay, so with Perforce, you actually have multiple ways to set some of these things up, right? And for this project, we ended up going for the simplest one, which was actually to have proxy servers, right? So even though you only have a single server here that is actually storing all of the information, it's basically centralizing all of the storage and the setup for this thing. We actually have 3 other servers in different locations around the world that are acting as not exactly mirrors, but they're acting more as buffers, as proxies, so that they hold a copy of this information, of the latest information, and it's holding there so that users that are closest to that region, they can actually access it faster, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, this is the simplest approach, but you probably have a lot more to say about other ways to set this up. So,
Yeah, I mean, this is honestly something that usually you won't have to worry about if you're doing a really small project with your friends. But if you are, like, if you do find that you're really distributed across the world, right? It's like, oh, I'm in the US and I'm working with a friend in Japan or in Korea or something. You might find that the one of you that's farther from the server, everything just seems to take a long time, and that's because of that ping, actually. Even if your bandwidth is good, it's that ping can slow down the connections, especially when you have lots of relatively small files, which external actors is a perfect example of that. Like a ton of files that are not that big themselves, but with that long ping going across the world, that can be a problem. So yeah, like you said, there's the proxy server, which is the simplest, and the proxy server just has its own copies of the files themselves. So like it'll have the copies of those UAsset files. So when I connect to that proxy server, I'm just getting those really quickly from a server close to me, but it's not storing all of the metadata of, you know, who the users are, all the history of everything. So it has to check back with the main server to get that, but then the files themselves can get downloaded from that server. But then any upload will get forwarded on to that main server. And then there's ones where you can do that have full replication of the whole database, so that if you say had a bunch of users connecting from another country, they could then get much faster read access. And then there's another one we call an edge server that's a full replication that you can read and write to. And so a lot of times what I've seen is you'll do something like, say your main server is in London, and then you might set up a cloud replica server in India, and then in the office in India, they might set up a proxy server. So you can even kind of chain these together so that you can get the data as close to where the people need it as possible, so they get it faster. But the other thing I think is interesting about this is, I don't know if y'all knew this, but the internet is just a weird, messed up, chaotic place. It's honestly a miracle the internet works at all in terms of connecting across the world. If you actually like look at the route your traffic takes, it does some crazy stuff that you would not expect, where you're like, I'm connecting to the town right over there, but it actually routes, you know, through several other cities and does all this weird stuff. And so the other advantage of the proxy server is that we have these ones set up on AWS. And then within AWS, you can do what they call VPC peering. All the cloud providers, all the major ones at least, have something similar, where you're basically saying this network in this region and this network in another region, we want to have kind of a direct line, as direct a line as we can between those, that's using AWS's infrastructure for it. And so when you connect to the proxy server, it then forwards your connection on to the main server, but it's doing that over AWS's network. So you're only kind of having to deal with the normal plebeian commercial internet to the proxy, and then you get this much faster connection to your main server. So that's also what helps in this case.
Yeah, and whenever we've had any complaints over download speed, it's always been because the user's connecting through the wrong proxy. Like as soon as they choose the proxy that's closer to them, they they're suddenly like, oh no, that's better.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and one of the really nice things about this as well, is that it's kind of a dynamic process, right? So we set up the base server without any of this stuff in mind, right? Like we just set up the Perforce server, and then kind of, I think it was like a week later or 2 weeks later, we were like, right, now we need the proxies. And then Seb went through and added all the proxies in, which was like the first time I think you'd ever added like
Yep.
Perforce proxies, and it was again a really easy process to do in the end. We were thinking,
Yep.
God, how much work is this going to be to go through and set up these individual things across the planet? Because it sounds like such a massive job, right? Like to go in, it's like
Yeah.
we have to get tickets to fly to all of these different countries and then make sure that all the buttons are correct. It's like no, you just go in and set it up and it's up and running and it worked. And then what was also really nice is that because it was all these proxies that we placed, if we needed to, we could have added more,
Mhm.
and just had an extra. Like if because again we're a little bit different, right? Like to a normal game studio, they would generally have kind of operating centers where they know that they're working out of, and then they know, okay, well, we've got a Montreal office and we've got a London office and we've got an office in kind of in Seoul or whatever. We can set up our proxies to be for those specific places. Whereas for us, we didn't know where the people joining would be coming from. And actually, like we don't even have access to that data, right? We again we're super super strict on the kind of data that we have. So actually, all we get is a username from ArtStation, and then from that we assign a Perforce account, and then we send back the information to ArtStation. So
Yep.
we basically we took a stab at guessing some spaces. So we've got London, which helps cover most of Europe. We've got a couple in America, and then we've got one in Korea to try and cover as much of that space as possible.
Mhm.
But the plan was always, and then we'll just wait and see, right? And then whoever shows up, if we have like a ton of people join from like India, and they're like, man, the connection's not good enough, we could always just spin up a proxy in India, and then we kind of that would help out that
Yep.
region. But actually, we found we didn't really need to do that in the end. We've kind of left the proxies as is, um, and it's all kind of run okay so far.
Yep.
Let's try and touch wood to make sure this is all okay.
Yeah.
The desk, okay, we're good. And then in terms of pricing as well, like it's been pretty cheap to run. So like the costs to run this art jam every month are about $10,000, and I would say 95% of that cost is cloud DDC, which isn't even that's not Perforce, that's not the Horde build that we run. That's a separate thing that we run to kind of keep Unreal running really quickly. It's been brilliant. Like the difference between it on and off since we've started getting up to the scale that we're at now is very very noticeable. So for smaller projects, they probably don't need it, but for us, with the amount of content that's being generated, having a cloud DDC is kind of vital. So that's been really good for that. But like our costs otherwise have been really low. So running the studio for that little, we'd budgeted a much higher number for all of the stuff that we'd ran. I think we had about 75,000.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it was 120 we'd calculated for about 3 or 4 months of the art jam when we first scoped it out, and that was kind of like the general operating running costs for like a game studio like of our size, which we put at around 2,000 3,000 people. We were using like the biggest numbers that we could think of at the time to estimate it all. But actually, where we're not running any code submits, we're not doing any engine builds. We're not, we're not doing a lot of stuff that a regular studio would do. Our
Yeah.
costs were just massively, massively reduced. So everyone downloads the engine from the launcher themselves. We stick with the standard launcher build that we've got. We don't do any engine modifications, and all of the code changes come pre-compiled. So everyone just downloads the standard launcher build and runs from there. And also we're not running it distributing on any custom platforms, so we don't need to worry about it from that perspective either. So costs have been really, really low. Like Horde's like $7 a day. I think it was that we worked it out. Might have gone up a little bit because our memory usage needs have increased a fair bit, but
And
yeah,
GPU now.
Yeah, GPU.
GPU.
So we've got a little bit of time left. I'll have a quick check through to see if there's any more Perforce specific questions. Okay, for Jace, is there anything useful to know about multiple workspace workflows? I use 3 at the moment, and one is just there to be a completely clean workspace to reset all the others.
Interesting.
Which sounds like an odd
Huh.
methodology.
Yeah, I've not come across that exact workflow before. So usually if you're just working within one stream, generally just one workspace is all you should need for that. And that actually helps keep things simpler, both from your own point of view, but also for the server. The server is keeping track of which files you have. And so if you were to, say, manually copy one workspace into another's folder, the server actually doesn't know now which files you have. And so when you do a sync, it's trying to be smart and only make you download files that you don't already have. But it might be confused about which files those are. So you actually kind of run some risks when you do things like that. There are ways to get around it, and there are some studios that do this, but you need to run some special commands in the command line to kind of tell it, hey, I've changed these files. You need to, I guess, just like update your list of what I have to match this. But generally you have to tell it like, hey, what I have now is the same as what this other workspace has. So for this project, I wouldn't really recommend that kind of workflow. More often when I do see people with multiple workspaces on the same project is if they're some kind of a lead, usually, who's working in multiple streams at the same time. So on this project, everyone's just working in the main stream, so it's very simple. But more realistically, what you would have at the very least, and I'd recommend this even just for your own projects, is you'd have kind of your mainline stream, which if you're from a Git world, you could think of that as like your trunk. And then below that, you would have your development stream. And that's where you do all your work, is in the development stream. And then occasionally when you're like, yeah, this is working, it's passing tests, it runs, I'm going to copy all of this up to that main stream so that the things in that mainline stream are always stable and always can run. And then the stuff in your development stream maybe doesn't run. So if that last minute, an investor comes along or someone and you want to demo it, you have a working one in your mainline stream. While in your development stream, you don't have to stress about, but I have a demo later today, or I want to show it to someone. I can't do that. So that's an example of where you might set up a separate workspace for each of those streams, just so you don't have to re-sync them, re-download them. If you want to go to it, you can just instead change which workspace you're working in.
I can give you a specific example of when it's useful, but for the most part, it's for coders, and it's in an environment when you don't know that everyone in your team is going to be able to just compile your binaries, right? Like what we have right now. Okay, so just to give you some idea of this, every time that I modify a C++ file, I basically need to compile the DLL files, and I need to commit them to the server so that everyone can download it and they have the most recent version of how what the actual C++ code in the project is working, right? That way you don't need to worry about installing Visual Studio, compiling all of these things, right? One of the things that we actually ran into through the project is what happens if I forget to upload the DLLs. And what you end up with is a lot of angry people on Discord asking why the game doesn't work, right? So one of the safeguards that I did to kind of avoid this thing is create a separate workspace, commit my project, and then resync only the binaries and the necessary files on the separate workspace, so that I don't actually blow up my hard drive and spend hours on that, right? And make sure that everything compiles and everything is opening correctly on that separate workspace. But like I said, it's very specific to coders under very specific circumstances, but it does happen sometimes.
That is a good example. If you are running into situations, and some people have brought this up, where I made some changes, but then when someone else opens it, it's showing up differently for them. It could be certain files are not getting picked up for delete or for add or something when you're changing them in the engine, and so they're not ending up in your submit. Kind of like, Seb, you were saying the DLLs could be in your case, but it also could be some other asset in the engine, or in some kind of U asset that
blueprints especially.
Yeah, so if you had extra space on your own hard drive, you could have a separate workspace that you only ever get latest. You never make any changes in there, where you could submit from where you're actually working, switch to that clean one, get latest, and just see, did those changes come through like I expect? Is it working? That could be a similar thing to what you're talking about there.
Mm-hmm. And it's useful because once you make those changes, it doesn't necessarily have to be C++, right? Sometimes you're working on gameplay sensitive blueprint, and you start changing functions, you start changing a few other things. You upload the changes, and then some other blueprints are pointing to a stale version of your blueprint, and they're breaking, right? So it's useful to just be able to double check that as fast as possible, instead of having someone like Sam in our case sync to latest and basically verify, well, is it working, is it not working? Right?
Yeah, definitely. If you've got someone nearby, it's always nice. If you have someone like working next to you, be like, hey, can you get latest and see that my changes worked? Saves you from having to switch back and forth.
And we do that a lot, right? Because a lot of the time, and I think some of this is due to the fact that we have limited time lockout on content. A lot of people don't necessarily submit all of the stuff that they've done. Because again, so for this project, this isn't like a default thing, but for this project, we basically made it so that you can only check out files for 24 hours. And then after that 24 hours, the file reverts. And that doesn't mean that you lose your work, but it does mean that the file is available for checkout by someone else at that time. And we did that because we were concerned that people would just either sit on content for ages or check it out and then forget and then go away and then leave the project or whatever and not come back. So we ended up doing that, but it meant that a lot of people, I think, would go away and they would work on something for maybe like the weekend or something like that. And they would check out some stuff at the start and they'd work on it, and then they would not submit it. And then those files would revert, and they wouldn't necessarily notice that. And then they would submit the files that they changed most recently, and it would miss that stuff.
That's a good point.
It's really useful to make sure that you get someone to be like, hey, can you just make sure? Because the version of the project that you might see might be different to what other people see. So, and I get that all the time when I'm doing like fly-throughs of the world, either when I'm doing like tutorial videos for the Discord or critique videos, or we're doing stuff like this. They're like, that's not what my map looks like. That's usually because you've got a ton of files that haven't been reconciled that you need to then go through and reconcile those files and do it. So yeah, make sure you reconcile offline work, and check through if you're seeing a mismatch between what you've got in your project and what you're seeing. It's very easy to do, especially with this version of the project where we are reverting content or reverting checkout.
Yeah, I think a couple things worth pointing out. Like you mentioned, that 24-hour limit on checking a file out is not normal. Like we actually, my colleague, one of the Ryans, wrote a custom script for that specifically because we don't have a hierarchy where your manager can call you and say you better do something with this file or you're fired. We don't have that, so we had to put in that protection. And then the other one is I know some people have run into this if you've made a lot of changes and you try to reconcile it all at once, or like if PCG creates a ton of things that you're trying to submit all at once, you'll hit that limit where you can't check out more than 500 things at one time. That's not a normal limitation either. That's something put in place so that someone can't accidentally check out every single file in the whole thing. And then for the next 24 hours, no one can do anything unless we go in and manually revert it. So those, just for any of you that have run into that, those are not normal things you would have in place at a game studio, but because of the kind of big open public nature of this, we put in some extra protections.
Yeah, the permissions too. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, another layer of protection that we have on this, you can see it on base content, you can see it on all of our blueprints. They're restricted so that not every user can actually check them out or submit changes to this. And that way we avoid someone just submitting changes and completely blowing up something like the player pawn or the gameplay framework, right?
Right.
Again, something that you're not necessarily going to have to worry about when you're doing studio work, but in these cases, it's very, very important.
You have to worry about it for a different reason. It's more that you're going to piss off somebody that you work with because you messed up their asset.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
But that's why it happens.
Yeah, but again, a lot of that is, it's like like Jay said, it's something that we've put in place to try and ensure stability and to keep things smooth for a project that's not normal, right? Like that's why we've locked the landscape, because we wanted everyone to have like at least a consistent plane to work on. And though that has annoyed quite a lot of people, I think, it's the alternative where anyone could go in and sculpt and modify and throw a mountain in where somewhere just seemed like way too high a risk. So yeah, we've put some limitations in there on how people can tweak and modify things. I think that's good. Ryan is actually in the chat, dropping some extra knowledge in there. He said,
Good.
Fun fact, there has been over 20,000 force reverts so far.
Wow. Amazing.
But yeah, so that covers most of the Perforce questions, except will these stats be shared in the Discord? We should definitely post all of the
I can post some of those graphs and stuff.
So make sure you get some of those graphs in, because that's going to be very entertaining. It would be great. I don't know how much time we've got left with you, Jace. I know we technically we can keep going.
Yeah, I'm good for a little while.
We can go a little while. Could we do a quick overview of how to set up your own Perforce server? Because that's like, I've got my own one at home that I use that's just on a NAS that I have for my my own personal work and stuff like that. They're incredibly useful to have. Like, having good version control set up as an artist is vital, because it just means that you keep all your content backed up. You can pull back to previous versions. Like, it's so useful to have access to that. So many people I know work off memory sticks and off like an external hard drive that they're constantly either pulling or pushing content back and forth to, and things like that. So yeah, it'd be great. It would be great to go over setting that stuff up. I know it's become much easier to do that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree. I'm always telling people, like, yes, I'll help set up this big server for 3,000 people, and you've got the budget for it, or 5,000 people, however many it is. But I've also got my own that I think I pay less than $10 a month for to host it in the cloud. And obviously, if I hosted it, on a NAS or something at home, I could do that. But I actually travel a lot, and so for me, having it in the cloud is nice, because then I just know that I'm going to have a pretty decent connection to it wherever I am. And I guess I could set up proxies and stuff if I wanted to, but I haven't even needed to really.
Wherever you're going on holiday, you could go, just make sure you set up your
Yeah,
proxies before you go. Um,
right. It
yeah.
easily could. You can even set up a proxy on your own computer. So you could also do that. Like you could have your server in the cloud and then a proxy on your NAS or on a spare computer or even on your own normal computer. You'll just use some extra storage for it. But yeah, you've got a lot of flexibility, some options. During the pandemic, actually, when a lot of people had to work from home, we saw a lot of people just make their own proxy server at home so that they could get much faster updates and things like that. Um, but yeah, so as far as setting it up, there's a lot of different options. And actually, if we can share my screen, we actually just recently, not that one, this. So on the Perforce website, there's this page that, let me see, how did I find this? Here, let me go back for a second. Oh, no, that was it. So if I just look up like Helix Core Cloud, for example, what is it? Helix Core server installation options. I forget how I got to that page now. So you can see we've got lots of YouTube videos. A lot of these were made by me or by Ryan, kind of help make this simpler. Because I'll be honest, neither of us had set up our own Perforce server or even done much with Perforce at all before getting hired just within the last few years. And so we feel the pain of, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not used to this. This is hard. So we've been trying to put out a lot of resources to make that easier. But if I come here, oh, nope. See, now I've lost the page. I'll find that link and send it to you. But basically, it shows all the different options. So you can install this just on your own Windows computer if you want. You can install this on a Linux machine. Got some people who run them on MacBooks. You could run it inside a VM on your machine. Like I think that's what Aaron's doing on his NAS. He's just running it inside a VM container probably. But then you can also do it in the cloud. What's that?
So how did you know?
Yeah. But you can also do it in the cloud. So that can either be on your own cloud. So meaning your own AWS account, your own Azure account, your own Google Cloud, your own DigitalOcean. And for all of those, we have some templates available. You can also do it manually on any others that you want. But I think something that is important for people to realize about it is that you don't have to have it hosted by us at all, right? So if you host your own on your own cloud provider or on your own computer, it will never phone home to us. We never have access to any of your data. So that's part of why things like the semiconductor industry uses a lot of Perforce, because they get to control their data. Because, there's so many tightly held secrets in that industry about how the different chips are made and all of that. And so if like that type of security is a big concern for you, you could do that. You could, if you end up paying for a license, you could put that burn it onto a CD and bring it into your office that's completely off the grid or something like that if you wanted to. But then on the other side of things, we do have a couple ways where our teams can do the admin for you. And the simplest of those is Helix Core Cloud, which just came out this year. And that's basically our managed service version where you sign up. In this case, it's through Azure right now. But you basically sign up and just say, I want this many users and this much storage space. And then maybe tomorrow you say, actually, I want to add a user. You can just move that slider in your dashboard up and it'll add another user for you. Or you can say, actually, now it's just me. I'll slide it back down. So you can really adjust your cost on demand. And the nice thing about that one is that you don't have to know anything about cloud hosting. I personally love learning about how to host stuff on AWS and tweak things, but a lot of people, it's like, no, I don't want to waste my time on that. I just want to do my game. I just want to do my art. And so in that case, Helix Core Cloud's a good option because it's you just pay monthly per user. And if you're not using the users, you can just slide that back down and then you're not paying for those extra users. And then you just pay for however much storage you want. So it's a pretty simple interface and way to set it up. And that way you're always getting updates. We do all the backups. all of that kind of stuff. So Helix Core Cloud is the thing to search for if you want that. $39 per user per month. And like I said, you can kind of scale that up or down as you need to. But if you want to have all the control, you can also install this yourself. And so for that, if you come to basically, if you go to perforce.com and look for Helix Core, um, you'll find these different options that'll have all the installation instructions for the technical way to do it. But if you end up on the page and you fill out the little sign up form where you put in like your name and email and phone number and all that, you can choose which way you want to deploy it. And if you choose one of the cloud providers, then you'll get a link to, let me grab it here so I have it saved. You'll get a link to our CloudFormation template. So for that, I open this up. And do my login. Yeah, here we go. I'll bring this over here. Hey, come on.
One of the things I love about this as well is like, so I think it was like 3 years ago, you had to go in and set up a lot of this stuff yourself manually on things like, like DigitalOcean or AWS. But now there's a lot of things that are just kind of really kind of point like point and click.
Yeah.
And it just goes through, and it makes it so much easier to set up.
Yeah. So this is the AWS version of this. It's a little different on each of the cloud providers in terms of what sorts of options there are to select. But the main thing here is you'd get to this page and you would just give it a name. So, I could say like Jace server 2 or something like that. Of course, I can't let that slide. And then for this permitted IP range, you'll see each step has these instructions about what that means. So you can limit it so it's only accessible from your own IP address, or you could set this to 0.0.0.0/0, so that then anyone in the world could access it. You've got all these, and there's some explanation along here. You do have to make a key pair on AWS. I have a video that walks you through doing that if you want help with it. And then you choose your instance type. So this is what they were talking about, where they started with kind of a smaller one and you can scale up. If you want to start at the very cheapest, this T3 Nano here, this is the one that my server was for a little while. I think I've upgraded to a small now, but the Nano is, I think it's $4 a month or $3.50, something like that, for just the instance itself. You can go through here, choose whether you want it to be case sensitive or not, how much storage you want to start with. And these are generally, it's like a 80 cents per 10 gigabytes. Sorry. Yeah, no, that's right. 80 cents per 10 gigabytes, right? So 100 gigs of storage is going to be like $8 per month, roughly. Some of the costs vary depending on, how you've got it set up. But just to give you a sense of kind of base level costs that you're going with. And so the depot volume, like we're saying for Project Titan, this is the one that's a terabyte. So we've got lots of space, but we're only using, even on Project Titan, which is a fairly large project, we're only using, what was it, 380 or 280?
It was 280.
280, yeah. And then the log size and the volume size, I think, are 50 gigs on those, and or maybe around 50% of both those drives, again, on a big project with a lot of users. So I've found that even starting off with this 110 and 10 for my own server got me pretty far before I eventually needed to increase the depot volume size.
And almost all of these numbers you can change after the fact as well. So
yeah, so storage, you can change it to go up, but not down. And that's just a limitation of the way disks work on all the cloud providers. They make it so you can expand a disk, but to make it smaller is actually really complicated. You have to like make a new small disk, copy over the files, replace the mount point. It's a pain. So start small, but just be aware of how you can upgrade it.
Mhm.
And then this is Swarm, which is a code review tool for doing kind of like pull request type workflows. And you can set up rules for who needs to approve stuff. But if you're not doing that, you can just set that to false. That will make a separate instance. So that will be more cost, obviously, but we can just set it to false. And then we don't have to pay for any of that. And then Handsoft, which is now called Helix Plan, is like a project planning, sprint planning software that we have. And all of these are free for up to 5 users. So with all of these, you'll pay some cloud costs if you're hosting it in the cloud, but as far as the cost for Perforce, it's totally free for up to 5 users. All the features, nothing's limited, anything like that. You just don't get access to support until you have a license, unless you're doing Helix Core Cloud, which is another way to get support for a lot less than needing to license your server. But all of it for a small team is still relatively affordable. As far as the amount of money you would pay for a Maya license or something like that is going to be a lot more than you're going to pay for this. And then you can do automatic backups. And then once you fill out all this, you just acknowledge these 2 boxes and hit create. And it'll just do it all for you. And then once it's done, we'll give you information about the IP address of your server and how to get your login and password and all that. And I actually have in my other window here, I have a YouTube video on our channel, on the Perforce official channel, called How to Deploy a Perforce Server on AWS, that walks through all those options. And I go into a lot more detail about sizes of storage volumes, like how to get your IP address, how to look at what the different instances mean, how much capacity they have, how to set up your own SSH key and upload it to Amazon, all that kind of stuff I go through in this. That's why it's a 37-minute long video. But there's chapters here, so you can skip ahead to the parts you need if you already know how to do some of that. And then just a quick thing, like you were saying about making this easier for people. Ryan and I have been working a lot on that. And if you go to the Perforce YouTube channel and into playlists, you can see we have this Helix Core Beginner's Guide that I think is also linked in one of the Getting Started channels in the Discord. But this kind of goes through all the basic stuff you need as a user. And then this admin guide is more if you're going to run your own server. These are some of the extra things you'd need to know, like permissions and setting up users and groups and things like that. And also how to expand that storage volume, which is an important one to check out if you want to start small. This will show you how you can expand that. So even if you're not experienced with Linux or the cloud, these guides should hopefully get you the things that you need. And if they don't, let us know and we can put that on the list to make more videos.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough like how important it is to have some kind of version control set up for
Yeah.
when you're working. Like it's, if you're a game art student and you're just, you're just starting out, it's so worth setting this stuff up to make sure that you've got some, some kind of online backup of your work as you're building. The number of students I know when, back when I was a lecturer and then a student myself before that, the number of people who lost work because
Mhm.
the computer that they had died, or the memory stick that they were working on, they lost it or something like that. It's just
Yeah.
crazy. So like
Yeah, I had a
having
friend who
a
had his backpack stolen out of his car during like the final break of senior year and lost everything from his entire 4 years
yeah,
and had to
Same.
ask around for anyone else who had copies of any of his projects to try to restore it. It was awful.
Mhm.
yeah.
We had a student once that lost his entire capstone project because an external hard drive failed, and
Mm,
he had to spend like two more semesters reconstructing everything. So it
wow.
happens.
Oof.
Yep.
Yes, so that is one nice thing about the cloud too, is that it's if your stuff gets stolen, you've still got that copy of it out there. So that is something I do like about the cloud, for the simplicity of I don't have to hire the security guards. They've done that for me, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I always take the view that, because like we've got it on AWS, right? Like if AWS goes down, I've got so many more important things to be worried about.
Right, right,
than my project. If like
right,
if AWS's entire infrastructure
right.
collapses, right? Like there's
Yep.
so many other things that's going to be a problem.
Well,
Um,
there was that day when AWS had some kind of a DNS issue and basically the whole internet went
yeah,
down. So,
yeah.
so there is
So
that. Yeah. Actually, as a more positive story, I did want to share that. So I've been working with some universities as well to help them incorporate more Perforce into their programs for game dev and also for VFX. And one of the schools that had actually already started doing this before I was working with them, the reason why they came to us and were like, we really want to build out this program more is that they had a graduate from their game dev program who got a job, and I don't even remember which studio, but at like their dream studio. And one of the reasons they got the job is that they came in with Perforce experience. And so for those of you doing Project Titan, being able to say like, oh yeah, I've worked on a large scale project with Perforce and was successful with that, like that's actually a really nice hireable trait
mm,
because it is a pain to have to onboard someone, and if they especially if they have no experience with version control at all, there is a bit of a like mental learning curve to Git or Perforce or anything where it's just like a different way of thinking about your files and how you manage them.
yeah, you're not a proper game dev until you've broken the build. Um, at some point, which we've all done. Um,
Right.
You can add to your CV. I had my commit reverted by an Epic employee.
Yeah, actually that's pretty good.
um, yeah. Right. Okay. But yeah, so I highly worth looking into. Jace's videos and Ryan's videos, I personally used. They're really good. They're really clear at like setting all of this stuff out. So if you are interested in setting up your own server, I highly recommend that you just give it a go. Like I said, it's a couple of dollars a month for this stuff, and for keeping your work, kind of like backed up, and not just backed up, but also, kind of like at points where you can restore to different versions is so handy to do. So definitely worth doing. We'll definitely get that stuff, all of those stats posted on the
Yeah.
Discord as well, so that people can see them, because that's really good to have that going through. And
I
we'll be
did I
making
did
some swag on that.
I did have one other thing on the note of swag and promotion and things like that is we've got a hashtag built on Perforce.
Mm.
And if you post like your work from Titan, or if you make your own server and are doing other things, you have anything you want to show off, put that hashtag on it, built on Perforce, and we'll try to reshare it, give you some promotion for that. And then we may also be sending some swag to people who've done really cool things built on Perforce. So just to throw that out there as well as yet another way that you might win yourself some swag.
Yeah, they have good. So if you've ever been to GDC, or had the opportunity to go, Perforce have a booth there every single year, and they have a claw machine, which is filled with like Perforce bees, which is literally has a queue going, kind of like 10 or 15 booths out in a direction. Those things are hard to earn. So, kind of hopefully it's one of those, because those things are cool.
And
So
we're
yeah.
making new bees every year, so they're becoming a collector item too. You
Yeah.
can't get last year's bee at this year's GDC.
Oh my
So
God.
so you've really got to hold on to your collection.
So yeah, definitely do that, kind of let them know that, they're a really great community. The fact that they've done this, they're not getting paid by us to do Project Titan. Literally, we've had three Perforce devs on the Discord who've been answering questions and helping out and getting people up and running, and going through stuff. And some of those questions haven't been easy ones to kind of like go through and solve. So I want to personally say, thank you again for helping us do that. Like, this project would not be running smoothly without you and Ryan and Ryan, Jason Ryan's going through, and making sure that that stuff runs really smoothly. And there's a few other people at Perforce who've been helping make sure that that stuff runs, like getting the Prometheus link running to Grafana so that we could really, kind of monitor performance on that side of things was really invaluable. So it's been really good to have you on the show today and also helping out for Project Titan.
Yeah, it's been super cool. Like all of us who were part of the team were just so stoked about this project of just the scale of it and kind of the ambitiousness of really you're going to let 4,000 people just kind of have at it. And it's been really cool to see how that's developed in the community and just sort of organically become this really cool thing. And the way people have self-organized and all that is really, really neat.
Yeah, we were really nervous about it as well.
Yeah.
But we didn't need to be actually. Like the level of professionalism in the Discord and on the project has just been, overwhelming. It's been
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. It's been
So
great.
so yeah, it's been really good how seriously everyone's taken it, um, while still hopefully having fun at the same time.
Yes.
Right. Well, we are a little bit over time, but I think we've covered all the things we need to do. Unless Jason, there's anything else you'd like to point out?
No, I think that's great. I'll try to put some stuff, I guess in the general channel is the best place to put
Yeah, let's get the
stats and
stats
things
in,
like that.
stats in
Okay.
there. That'll be good. Yeah,
Great.
definitely. And again, like Jason and Ryan will be with us till the end. So
Yep.
if you've got any more Perforce questions or need any more Perforce help, we've got the Perforce help channel in the Discord that you can post in, and get some support there. And if Klukal doesn't beat you to it,
I know it's like a race
so
every
he's
time.
he's
Yeah.
yeah he's quick off the bat there. So yeah. Okay, cool. Well, with that, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Jace, again for coming on the channel. Thank you, Seb, for joining, and thank you, kind of people hidden away in the background, making sure that this stream runs cleanly and smoothly as always. And we will see you next week for week 7, at which point there'll only be 3 weeks left, where we're going to be doing another art critique. We've got another one of our wandering critics coming on to do another crit pass on the game world. So be sure to tune in for that. And that's all from me. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.